This meeting of the Senate Judiciary Committee will come to order. My apologies to my colleagues and those in attendance for being a few minutes late. Today we're going to consider 6 judicial nominees. Cindy Chung to the Third Circuit, Justice Tamika Montgomery Reeves to the Third Circuit, 4 nominees to the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, Kelly Hodge, John Murphy, Judge Mia Perez, and Judge Kaize Scott, an outstanding group of nominees. I'm going to waive my opening statement at this point because I see we have colleagues here to make introductions, and I'll turn first. I don't know who is senior in seniority. It appears we're going to Senator Coons first. Senator Coons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will endeavor to be brief, given my colleagues. I am very pleased to be introducing the nominee for the Third Circuit Court of Appeals from the state of Delaware and the current Delaware Supreme Court Justice, Tamika Montgomery Reeves. Senator Carper and I were delighted to recommend Justice Montgomery Reeves to our president for this nomination. She's been a model of judicial temperament and legal acumen in her 7 years of service on Delaware courts. First appointed to our Delaware Court of Chancery in 2015, she quickly developed an unmatched reputation among litigants as a thorough and thoughtful jurist. She's published over 100 opinions, meaningfully shaping corporate law on a court widely regarded as a critical national forum for business disputes. She was appointed to Delaware's highest court, our Supreme Court, in 2019, and according to her colleagues on that court, she's continued to demonstrate, and I quote from a supportive letter, all the qualities of an exceptional jurist, a keen intellect, strong work ethic, humility, and balanced and well-reasoned decision-making. Justice Montgomery Reeves is also a trailblazer, the first person of color appointed to our state's Court of Chancery, only the second woman to serve on that court, and the first person of color and youngest person ever to serve on our state's highest court, the Delaware Supreme Court. Born in Jackson, Mississippi, a graduate of the University of Mississippi and University of Georgia School of Law, Justice Tamika Montgomery Reeves first came to Delaware as a law clerk for long-serving and well-regarded Chancellor Bill Chandler, who is with us today. We have Chancellor Chandler to thank for convincing Justice Montgomery Reeves to build her legal career in Delaware. One of the most distinguished legal minds in Delaware, the former Chancellor, is here, and I'd like to quote briefly, if I could, from his letter of support to this committee, in which he comments both that she was in many ways one of the finest law clerks that served with him in a 26-year career, and that he is often approached by lawyers who have appeared before either Vice Chancellor or Justice Montgomery Reeves, and they invariably praise her for her grasp of the often complicated issues, her perceptive and to-the-point questions, her patience, modesty, and abiding respect for those affected by the judge's exercise of judicial power. Before becoming a judge, she was a distinguished corporate litigator, first as an associate at the nationally distinguished firms of Weil Gotshal and Wilson Sonsini, becoming a partner at the Wilmington office of Wilson Sonsini in 2015. And like the members of the Court of Chancery and the Supreme Court, Justice Montgomery Reeves' former colleagues at those firms have also reached out to this committee to praise her character and qualifications. Justice Montgomery Reeves has been supported in all of her accomplishments. She is joined by many of her family today. I will simply reference and introduce her husband, Jeffrey, and their oldest son, Jackson, and I suspect Justice Montgomery Reeves will introduce the rest of her wonderful family who are here today. She's a brilliant legal mind, a woman of exceptional character, is held in the highest regards by litigants who've practiced before her and colleagues from the bench. It's my honor to introduce her, and I'd urge all of my colleagues to support her swift confirmation to the Court of Appeals. And Mr. Chairman, we have strong bipartisan and supportive letters from the Delaware State Senate, from our current governor, John Carney, and former governor, Jack Markell, and now ambassador, from Chancellor McCormick, the Delaware Federal Bar Association, as well as a compelling letter from Chancellor Chandler, and I would urge that all of those be admitted for the record. Thank you for the opportunity to offer this introduction.
Without objection, I want to apologize to the ranking member. I should have recognized him at an earlier stage. But Senator Grassley, do you have anything you wish to say?
I have a statement, but I'm just going to insert it in the record. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, too. Well, the 5 Pennsylvania nominees have the bipartisan support of their home state senators. That is a good thing. It doesn't happen often enough, and when it does, we take note of it. I want to recognize Senators Kaise and Toomey for working together with the White House to put together an impressive slate of nominees for the federal bench. And let me recognize first Senator Toomey to speak on behalf of those nominees.
Thank you very much, Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Grassley, members of the committee, and thank you for the opportunity to introduce my fellow Pennsylvanians who've been nominated to serve on the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. They each have a wealth of legal experience, and I am pleased to support their nominations. I also want to thank Senator Kaise for cooperating with my scheduling challenges and letting me go first despite his considerable seniority over me. More importantly, I want to say how grateful I am to Senator Kaise for the bipartisan collaboration that he and I have been able to share in filling Pennsylvania District Court vacancies. Over the past 12 years, we've worked together to vet, recommend, and confirm 29 federal district court judges. And I look forward to working with him to fill Pennsylvania's remaining district court vacancies. Now, we've got 6 nominees this morning, so I'm going to be very brief with my introductions. But I do want to start by recognizing Ms. Cindy Chung, who's been nominated to serve on the Third Circuit. She has served very ably as a prosecutor at the federal and local levels for almost 20 years. Currently, Ms. Chung serves as the U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Pennsylvania. Now, turning to our district court nominees, our first nominee today is Judge Mia Perez. Judge Perez is a native of Philadelphia, where she serves as a trial judge on the Court of Common Pleas. During her 6 years as a judge, she has handled a wide range of both criminal and civil cases. Before joining the bench, she worked as an attorney in private practice. Our second nominee today is Judge Kaize Scott. Judge Scott is also a native of Philadelphia, where she serves as a trial judge on the Court of Common Pleas. During her 7 years on the bench, she's handled 600 criminal cases that have gone to judgment. Previously, she served as a public defender in both federal and state court. Our third nominee today is Kelly Hodge. She is an experienced litigator who's previously served as the district attorney of Philadelphia. Currently, she's a partner at Fox Rothschild, where she has a diverse practice. She previously served as both an assistant DA and a public defender. And our final nominee, Mr. Chairman, is John Murphy. John Murphy is a native of the Philadelphia area. Currently, he's a litigation partner at Baker Hostetler, where he specializes in intellectual property litigation. He serves as an adjunct professor at Rutgers Law School and has co-authored a casebook on patent litigation. In addition, Mr. Murphy provides pro bono representation to veterans and their families and serves on the board of an education nonprofit that supports low-income students. He started his legal career as a federal appeals court clerk and has outstanding academic credentials. He earned his BS at Cornell, his JD at Harvard, and in addition to that, he has a PhD in chemical engineering from the California Institute of Technology. So he's both a lawyer and a doctor, has terrific expertise on intellectual property, and that's not something you see every day in a judicial nominees record. So let me just close with this. I am pleased to support all of these nominees. Together, they'll bring a wide range of experiences to the bench, including experience as a state judge, a federal prosecutor, a district attorney, and an expert on intellectual property law. I'm confident that each of these has the qualities needed to serve as judges. They have the experience, intellect, integrity, and respect for the limited role of the judiciary in our constitutional system. Thank you for considering their nominations.
Thanks, Senator Toomey. We know your schedule's busy. We're glad you could join us this morning, and I now recognize Senator Kaise.
Mr. Chairman, thanks very much for this hearing. I'm honored to be here on behalf of these nominees. I want to thank you and the ranking member, as well as Senator Toomey, as he mentioned, working together with him for 12 years to confirm all of those judges. I think it's an unmatched record in a state with senators of different political parties. We're grateful for that. I, of course, want to thank the nominees for their commitment and their endurance in a long process. I also want to commend and salute the work of their families to support them in all of their professional careers, as well as the process that they've been undertaking to become a nominee. I'll start when I provide biographical sketches, I'll pick up where Senator Toomey left off and maybe fill in some other information that I think the committee should be aware of. I'll start with Cindy Chung, the nominee to serve on the United States Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit. Pennsylvania is, of course, one of the states that are covered by the Third Circuit, And Cindy, as Senator Toomey mentioned, is currently serving as the United States Attorney for the Western District of Pennsylvania. She graduated from Columbia Law School in 2002 and Yale University in 1997. She served as a law clerk in the United States District Court for the Middle District of Alabama. After clerking, she continued her career in public service, first as an assistant district attorney in the New York County District Attorney's Office, then as a trial attorney in the criminal section of the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division. She moved to Pittsburgh in 2014 to serve as Assistant United States Attorney for the Western District, and since then, she served the people of the Western District with integrity and a commitment to administering fair and impartial justice for all. And again, most recently serving as U.S. Attorney. In addition to the letters of support she received from prosecutors, law enforcement, and former federal judges, I think the highest compliments have come from opposing counsel who've appeared against Cindy. These individuals specifically highlighted Cindy's willingness to listen and consider both sides of an argument and to give careful and thoughtful consideration to novel and complex legal issues. I can think of no better traits for a federal appellate judge than those. Furthermore, in addition to her legal reputation, Cindy's nomination is indeed historic. If confirmed, she will become the first Asian Pacific American judge to serve on the United States Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit. So I'm proud to support her nomination. Next, I'll turn to our district court nominees. First, Judge Mia Perez for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. Judge Perez graduated from Philadelphia's public schools before attending Tufts University and Temple University's Beasley School of Law. She's dedicated her career to the people of Philadelphia, serving as a former public defender and solo practitioner before being elected as one of the youngest judges in the Court of Common Pleas of Philadelphia. That is our trial court in Pennsylvania. Judge Perez's legal reputation is respected throughout the community, as evidenced by the wide support she's received from law enforcement, former prosecutors, defense attorneys, and law school faculty. Her nomination is also historic. If confirmed, she would be the first Asian Pacific American and second Latina judge to serve on the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. Third, our second district court nominee, Judge Kaize Scott, is also a proud graduate of Philadelphia's public schools. She went on to receive her undergraduate degree from Hampton University and her law degree from West Virginia University before dedicating her entire legal career to public service as a clerk, public defender, and judge on the Court of Common Pleas. Her legal acumen and reputation as an impartial judge are unquestioned, but just as compelling is her dedication to helping and mentoring young attorneys, particularly young attorneys of color, throughout the city of Philadelphia. This commitment to mentorship is well known, as further evidenced by the letters of support that the committee has received from her mentees, law clerks, and the Barristers Association of Philadelphia. Our third nominee on the Eastern District bench, Kelly Hodge. Kelly was born in Abington, Pennsylvania, right outside of the city of Philadelphia. She attended the University of Richmond, the University of Virginia School of Law before becoming a public defender in Virginia's Public Defender Office. In 2004, she moved back to Pennsylvania and began working at the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office. After serving as Pennsylvania's Safe Schools Advocate and the University of Virginia's Title IX Coordinator, Kelly was appointed by the Court of Common Pleas in Philadelphia to serve as the first black woman to lead the District Attorney's Office in Philadelphia in 2017 and 2018. As evidenced throughout her career, Kelly's stellar leadership, commitment to public service, and her unwavering commitment to equal justice under law will greatly benefit the people of the Eastern District. And finally, John Murphy for the District Court of the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. As Senator Toomey mentioned, John Murphy's stellar academic background, graduating from Harvard Law School as well as other advanced degrees, becoming a nationally renowned intellectual property expert. In addition, he's maintained an impressive pro bono practice. Also has done volunteer work, as Senator Toomey mentioned. His academic credentials, his impressive legal career, and his commitment to public service as well will serve the people of the Eastern District. So to conclude, when I make a determination about whether to support a candidate for a federal judgeship, I consider, as we all do in the Senate, a variety of attributes, including the academic record of the individual, the intellect, the integrity of the individual, their temperament, their commitment to justice, and commitment, of course, to equal justice under the law. All of these nominees not only meet those expectations, they exceed them, and these individuals will faithfully serve the people of Pennsylvania. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
Thanks, Senator Kaise, and I want to thank you and Senator Toomey again for this bipartisan effort. We appreciate that for the committee. Now we'll turn to our colleague, the Honorable and Indefatigable Senior Senator from the state of Delaware, Senator Carpet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, Senator Kaise is still here, and Senator Toomey is left. Let me just say, a lot of people watching the news these days, they would think we don't agree on anything here in Washington, D.C. And I just want to tell you how refreshing it is to have heard about the partnership for the last dozen or so years that you and Pat have had. And really doing an important part of our job, and is recommending people to serve on the judiciary. And I just say congratulations to all who've been nominated, and good luck. You've been supported here by a couple of good men. Thank you. That's not all I have to say, but that was my opening line. Today I have the honor and privilege of introducing the Honorable Tamika Montgomery Reeves, President Biden's nominee to serve as a judge on the United States Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit. But first, let me just say this. Delaware is in the house. I mean, like really in the house here today. And of course, my friend, wingman Senator Coons, with whom I work together on so many things, including the judicial nominations, is on the dais this morning as a key member of this esteemed committee. But joining Justice Montgomery Reeves are about 200 of her closest family and friends, many of them by way of Delaware. That's about half the people in Delaware. So, well, not really. All kidding aside, Justice Montgomery Reeves comes from a big family, and many of them are here today to show their support. I can't recognize every one of them. We would still be lunchtime if I did, but in my 3 minutes of allotted time, I do want to thank her parents, Mom for bringing in Tamika into the world, and she and her husband for raising just a terrific child and daughter. And I want to thank her husband, Jeffrey, and their two children, Jackson and Tyson, for letting their wife and their mom answer the call to serve the people of our state and God willing, the people of our country. I also want to recognize Chief Justice Seitz, Chancellor McCormick, former Chancellor Chandler, and other judicial officers from the first state who have traveled to be here with us today. Delaware has a tight-knit legal community, and there's really no better example of the collegiality and friendship that exists on our state courts than some of the most respected judges in the country carpooling down, or taking a train down the Northeast Corridor to support their former colleague. Mr. Chairman and colleagues, Senator Coons and I have often said that those of us here in the Senate could learn a thing or two from Delaware. And when it comes to nominating judges, Delaware's governor is tasked with filling vacancies on some of the nation's most highly regarded state courts, including the state Delaware Court of Chancery and the Delaware Supreme Court. The governor of Delaware oftentimes seeks out advice from a bipartisan judicial nominating commission, but it's also required to nominate judges from both political parties. I'll say that again. It's oftentimes required to nominate judges from both political parties to maintain a balance, overall balance across our judiciary. This rule, enshrined in our state's constitution, brings balance to our court system, and I believe it has served our state and our nation well for many years. I think it serves as a model for our country as well. Some 25 years ago, when I was privileged to serve as governor of Delaware, I had the opportunity to nominate a new chancellor, or what some would call a chief justice, to the Delaware Court of Chancery. I didn't nominate a Democrat. I did not nominate a Democrat. I nominated Bill Chandler, who was born in Sussex County in southern Delaware and previously worked for not one but two Republican governors, Pete DuPont and later Mike Castle. I'm told that Bill Chandler can trace his family ties to the Republican Party back several centuries. Now, I may have taken some heat politically for it at the time, but I knew that Bill was the most qualified and the best person for the job. It didn't matter what political party he was from. I knew he'd make one heck of a chancellor, and boy, did he. Now, why am I telling a story about Bill Chandler at the confirmation hearing for Justice Montgomery Reeves? Well, here's why. A few years ago, Bill Chandler hired a young law student at the University of Chicago to become one of his clerks. Her name was Tamika Montgomery Reeves. Mr. Chairman, colleagues, I'm a proud Delawarean, but I'm actually a native son of West Virginia. Justice Montgomery Reeves is also a proud Delawarean, but like me, she made her way to Delaware from another place, in her case from Mississippi, fell in love with our state and now calls it home. After clerking for Chancellor Chandler, Tamika graduated and began a career in private practice. She told me in a meeting with her family today in my office, she said that she knew at the age of 3 what she wanted to be. And at the age of 3, a corporate attorney. Now that's pretty amazing. She became an expert in corporate law and complex business litigation. And after a brief stint in private practice in New York State, she was hired by another prominent law firm, Wilson Sonsini, that just so happened to be looking to open an office in Delaware. She quickly made partner and could have continued on a path as a lucrative legal career, but Justice Montgomery Reeves felt called to serve. And in 2015, when a vacancy occurred on the Court of Chancery, our governor then, Jack Markell, nominated her to that spot on the bench. She was confirmed unanimously by the Delaware State Senate. 4 years later, in 2019, Governor Carney, John Carney, who many of us know from his service here as our congressman for a number of years, but Governor Carney nominated her to serve on the Delaware Supreme Court. Once again, she was confirmed unanimously by the Delaware State Senate. By the way, colleagues, the Delaware State Senate leadership, Democrats and Republicans, have sent a letter in support of Justice Montgomery Reeves' confirmation to the Third Circuit. So having said that, Justice Montgomery Reeves is also a trailblazer, becoming the first African American to serve on both the Court of Chancery and our state Supreme Court. She has been nominated to these positions because her credentials and her intellect are top-notch. So is her heart. So, Mr. Chairman, colleagues, I know these hearings sometimes get intense. Folks try to score, in some cases, not always, some political points, but I would just say you're about to meet one of the, not just brightest women from Delaware, but one of the kindest, and from maybe even from Mississippi for that matter. If confirmed, Justice Montgomery Reeves will bring a spirit of collegiality and consensus to the Third Circuit. You never have too much of that. The spirit of our nation needs restoring at this moment, and she can help with that. So at a time when many Americans are losing faith in some of our institutions, including the federal judiciary, I believe it's more important than ever that we nominate and confirm individuals of the highest caliber to our federal courts. Justice Montgomery Reeves is of that highest caliber. She has my strongest possible endorsement. I urge this committee to support her nomination. And I thank you, Mr. Chair and colleagues, especially Senator Coons, for allowing me to be his partner through this process. That's all I've got.
Thank you very much, Senator Carper. And like Justice Montgomery Reeves, at age 3, I knew with certainty about my future. I wanted ice cream for dessert. Thank you for that great...
Some things never change.
Some things never change. Thank you very much. Thank you, Senator Kaise, both of you for being here. We have 2 panels. First, the 2 circuit nominees, then the district court nominees will follow in the second panel. And I'd like, as the staff is arranging a few things at the table, if both of the circuit court nominees would come to the witness table and be administered the oath. If you raise your right hand, do you affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Thank you. Let the record reflect that both of the nominees have answered in the affirmative. We give you 5 minutes each for an opening statement, and we'll start with Cindy Chung.
Thank you, Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Grassley, for convening this hearing today. And members of the committee, I thank you for taking the time to speak with me and to consider my nomination. I would also like to thank President Biden for nominating me. It is such an honor to be here today, and I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to further serve my country. Thank you, Senators Kaise and Toomey, for the kind and generous introductions and for your support. I would like to recognize Judge D. Brook Smith. If I have the fortune to be confirmed, it will be such an honor to be associated with his seat. Judge Smith embodies the dedication and warmth of those who work in the Third Circuit and the Western District of Pennsylvania. I'm so lucky to work in this district where all zealously fulfill their roles while maintaining their respect and collegiality for each other. In that spirit, I would like to recognize and thank my colleagues, courthouse community, law enforcement and community partners, and members of our office for making our district such a wonderful place to work. I would also like to thank Judge Myron Thompson, who mentored me during my clerkship and after. He has been a true role model for me. Finally, the only thing that would make this day more special is if my parents were alive to see this day. I'm so lucky, nonetheless, to have my family and friends who are here with me today and in spirit. Your support over the years has meant everything to me, and I thank you. I appreciate the time you've afforded me, and I look forward to your questions.
Thanks. Thank you very much. And now, Justice Montgomery Reeves.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Durbin, Ranking Member Grassley, and all the members of the committee for the opportunity to appear before you today. Thank you to President Biden for nominating me and for his confidence in me to take on this extraordinary responsibility. I feel deeply blessed and honored for the opportunity to serve this country in this amazing way. Thank you to Senator Carper and Senator Coons for your support of my nominations and your kind remarks here today. And thank you to Judge Ambrose for his service on the Third Circuit. I would not be here without the love and support of my wonderful and, as you heard, very large family. My husband, Jeffrey, is my biggest cheerleader and the rock of our family. Thank you for always being there and pushing me to pursue my dreams. Thank you to my sons. One's here today, and one is starting his first day of school, but they are my greatest inspiration. Thank you to my mother, Betty Cribbs, and my father and stepmother, Dury and Caroline Montgomery. My parents worked tirelessly to raise us and provide for us and ensure that we all pursued an education, which for them is the key to the American dream, and they're all here. Thank you to my mother-in-law, Liddell Reeves. She's always at everything. She's here today, and I thank her. And thank you to my father-in-law, Alan, and his wife, Lisa, who couldn't be here. I'd like to thank my sisters, Angela and Latrina, and my little brother, DJ. They're also here. They're my built-in best friends, and I don't know what I would do without them. I also thank my nieces, Nyla, Micah, and Alina, who are missing high school classes today to be here. I thank my Delaware court family. I have been so lucky to have amazing colleagues. The Chief Justice Seitz, is here today. And a special thank you to Chancellor Chandler, who hired me as a law clerk in Delaware, in the Delaware Court of Chancery so many years ago. He was a wonderful mentor and friend, and he remains so today, and I'm so thankful to have his support. And he, along with the current Chancellor and 5 Vice Chancellors, traveled from Delaware here today to support me. So I just thank them so much for their support. And I also thank my supportive court staff, including Jackie Phillips, my assistant, who is always there for me. Finally, I just am thankful for all of my family, friends, and church members who couldn't be here today, but who are watching remotely. I would not be here without the love and support of these people. To the committee, I'm so humbled to be sitting before you, and I very much look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much. And if your whole family had attended, we'd need a larger room.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Quite a showing of support for both of you, and I thank you for that. I'm going to just zero in on one question in my 5 minutes, since we're going to have 2 rounds, 2 panels, and it's to Justice Montgomery Reeves. I'm interested in hearing more about a 2016 case, Doe versus Coop, in which you considered a Fourth Amendment challenge to a Delaware law that required certain convicted sex offenders to wear GPS monitors at all times as a condition of release. This was a state law. My understanding is that there was no dispute over whether the monitors constituted a search under the Fourth Amendment, but the parolees argued that such monitoring was unreasonable and therefore unconstitutional. You disagreed and upheld the state law. The Delaware Supreme Court affirmed your decision. Could you walk us through your reasoning in that decision?
Thank you so much for the question, Chair Durbin. That, as you said, was a statute, a state law statute that required the use of the ankle bracelets. There wasn't a question about whether or not there was a search under the Fourth Amendment, but the question was obviously whether or not it was an unreasonable search under the Fourth Amendment. And there was not Delaware case law on point. That would be the first place that I would have looked is for a Delaware Supreme Court case law on point. There wasn't United States Supreme Court case law specifically addressing that issue. But I was able to look to other circuits. There were other circuits that had addressed the issue and had determined that people on probation and parole are analyzed under a different standard. And in applying that standard, I determined that the statute was constitutional.
Ms. Chung, when you were appointed U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Pennsylvania, you spoke about your role as a public figure. You told a story about your grandfather, one of the first prosecutors in modern-day South Korea, how he refused to accept even chocolate candy that was delivered for his children in an effort to influence his decisions. And you spoke about how you hope to carry on his legacy and show the same integrity. How will you view your role as a public figure should you be confirmed to the Third Circuit?
Good morning, Chairman Durbin. Thank you so much for that question. If I have the great fortune of being confirmed as a judge, I will adhere to my commitment to not be influenced by any undue factors, to uphold the rule of law and the Constitution. I think that my role as United States Attorney and prosecutor has situated me well for that, in that not only as any advocate I have to represent my client, but I also have to safeguard the constitutional rights of the defendant. And sometimes that has meant taking positions that did not further the government's case. I will, of course, have a different role as a judge, and I will uphold that role, and I look forward to meeting that challenge if I have the great fortune of being confirmed.
Thank you very much. Senator Grassley.
Well, congratulations to both of you. I want to talk to you, Montgomery Reeves, on corporate law. We've had some activist groups that believe that companies should address abortion, the Second Amendment, climate change, and ESG issues. In your view, can company directors be held liable for a failure to address social and political issues under Caremark and similar cases?
Thank you for the question, Senator. Under Delaware law, directors of corporations owe two overarching duties: the duty of care and the duty of loyalty. Delaware law requires that directors act in the best interest of the corporation, but there is a lot of deference that's afforded to directors in the exercise of their duties. The question about whether or not a director would be found liable for having breached their duties for not doing a particular thing would be a complex one that would require us to look closely into the facts of the case. But there is a lot of discretion for precisely how directors exercise their fiduciary duties.
In a conversation this year with Columbia Law School students, you suggested that corporate law, quote, is a vehicle by which society can tackle pressing social issues, end of quote. In your opinion, how could corporate law be used to tackle social issues?
Thank you so much for the question, Senator. I don't remember that particular quote. I do remember the conversation, and the question that was presented was, do directors have the leeway to consider ESG issues? That was the context. And I think that my answer was something like what I said to you a few minutes ago, which is directors of Delaware companies obviously owe those two overarching duties that I talked about. And but beyond that, Delaware is pretty lenient. That is, directors have a lot of discretion. So even though they have to act in the best interest of the company, they have a lot of discretion. A director may determine that he or she needs to consider specific issues, things like, I don't know what issues you might have in mind, but specific ESG issues, that's what that panel was focused on, in acting in the best interest of the company. And my statements were simply to say that's not automatically a violation of fiduciary duties under Delaware law. There's a lot of discretion under Delaware law.
You served as co-chair of the Delaware Supreme Court Diversity Strategic Planning Committee. I have this question. The report urged the Delaware Supreme Court to, quote, take steps to reduce implicit bias and identity threat in court environment. Give me your idea of what identity threat is and what steps should take to reduce implicit bias.
Thank you so much for the question, Senator. I'm familiar with the report generally. I'm not familiar with that particular recommendation. I did serve on the committee, but the recommendations were made by a large group of people, and the recommendations were made to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has not adopted all of the recommendations, and we have not tackled that particular recommendation. So I'm not exactly sure what that specific phrase that you read, what's intended by that specific phrase. And it's not something that we have discussed and decided how to address.
Okay, and Ms. Chung, I'm going to ask you a very general question on the issue of judicial philosophy. But before I ask that question, particularly on my side of the aisle, over the course of the last 20 months, members have been trying to get people to state I think you'd call it a general judicial philosophy. And a lot of my colleagues are irritated because nobody wants to express a judicial philosophy. And I don't understand why nobody would want to do that. So I have this question to you. When it comes to describing your judicial philosophy, how would you describe yourself? And that's usually either being an originalist or being a person for a living constitution, or would you describe or just simply tell me your judicial philosophy?
Thank you, Ranking Member Grassley. I believe if I were confirmed, if I had the great fortune of being confirmed, my judicial philosophy would be largely informed by my decades of experience as a prosecutor and a litigator. So it would be very practical. It would recognize the limits of judicial power. I would work to issue clear rulings that made the holding and the underlying rationale clear. Obviously to give all parties a fair and open hearing and to rule only on the record using the Supreme Court and Third Circuit precedent and the method of interpretation that is embodied in that precedent.
Could I ask one more question? I think it takes less than a minute. And this is to both of you. If confirmed, will you be willing to fully and faithfully follow the Dobbs decision?
Without hesitation, Senator.
Yes, Senator, without hesitation.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Senator Grassley. Senator Whitehouse.
Thanks very much, Chairman, and thank you to the two nominees for being here and for being willing to undertake this new responsibility. I want to take my time with you to flag the question of originalism that our ranking member has just raised. I've said before that I don't think it's necessary for a judge to come to the bench with a judicial philosophy. I think that's a fairly recent invention, and usually designed to provide an avenue for right-wing political influence into judicial decision-making. Specifically, that originalism is a judicial philosophy that somehow belongs in courtrooms is a bit of a mystery to me. And that you have to sign up for a judicial philosophy when you become a judge, I think is, in some respects, fairly alien to the very business of judging, where you've got the Constitution, you've got the law, you've got the language, and you've got reason and justice. And that would seem to me to be enough of a structure to make the right decision without importing a judicial philosophy. I would like to ask that a recent article by Dean Chemerinsky be made exhibit in this hearing. It's called "Even the Founders Didn't Believe in Originalism." And as the dean of a prominent law school, I think Chemerinsky's done some very important research on the question of originalism.
Without objection, will be entered into the record.
Thank you. And how, in fact, if you look at Marbury versus Madison, that's not an originalist decision. There's nothing in Article 3 in the text of the decision, if you're looking, as Dobbs did, for specific words like abortion, that says, okay, you get to do judicial review over all of Congress, all of the executive acts, as the arbiter of the Constitution. So I think that's one flaw in this whole doctrine of originalism. The other flaw is that it's followed with great selectivity by its proponents. If it were a real principle, you'd think they'd apply it irrespective of the direction that it took the decision that they were writing. But what I've been witness to in my time on this committee and as my time as a lawyer beforehand is that originalism is rolled out as a doctrine when it provides the results that are desired by the judge. But when originalism as a principle will lead to an outcome that the judges don't want, originalism gets jettisoned out the window. And I think if there's a question whether something is a principle or not, or a philosophy or not, it's that you follow it one way or the other. And it's not a principle of convenience or a philosophy of convenience that you only use when it gets you to the result that you want, or that the people who got you onto the court want, to be a little bit more blunt about it. So I would flag two particular examples, just so I'm not saying this without providing any support for that theory. One, of course, is Citizens United. If you want to look for originalism in that case, you have to look at Justice Stevens's dissent. The majority opinion was just completely made up. And to add insult to injury, hasn't even been enforced on its supposed terms by the judges that put it there. But clearly, there was not much originalism in allowing corporations immense power to spend unlimited money secretly in democracy, when at the time of the original founders, there was no role for corporations in American democracy. And if you want to make decisions based on the word abortion not appearing in the Constitution, how about the word corporation not appearing in the Constitution? And yet there's an entire enormous Republican judge-created array of decisions that have built corporate power into our democracy in ways that the founders, I think, would shudder to see. So you want originalism in Citizens United? Look to the dissent. Look at Heller. Judge Posner is pretty well respected, usually is seen as conservative judge. He said, if you want to find the well springs of Heller, you got to look elsewhere than originalism. So I think this whole question of judicial philosophy is one we've got to be very careful about. I think that some of these principles have been created in politically oriented doctrine factories, reverse engineered in order to get to results that the donors behind those doctrine factories want, and that there are an awful lot of judges who take one look at who's making the argument and what they want, and then they decide whether to apply originalism or not. And so that's a long way of expressing my appreciation to Dean Chemerinsky for his academic review of originalism, and adding my own more practical view that, I mean, if you're going to have a philosophy, then stick to it. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Whitehouse. Senator Lee.
I disagree respectfully with my colleague's suggestion that Marbury isn't the natural interpretation of the text of Article 3. Article 3, which gives the power to the courts to decide cases and controversies. The central holding of Marbury, to which he's referring, is the notion that it's emphatically the province of the judicial branch to say what the law is. That is, to interpret the law where necessary to decide cases and controversies. As to suggestions about corporations, New York Times v. Sullivan involved the corporation. No one suggested in that case that there were no First Amendment rights at issue because of the corporate form of the speaker, the publisher, the press agent there. As to the suggestion that judicial philosophy doesn't matter, it does. When I ask that question, I'm not looking for any particular answer, but I do want, more than any particular answer or label, a description of how a particular nominee might go about deciding cases and controversies. When asked to construe a provision of the U.S. Code, of the U.S. Constitution, or some other provision of law, I want to know how he or she might go about it. Justice Montgomery Reeves, I'd like to start with you. You previously served as the Vice Chancellor on the Delaware Court of Chancery. Now, Delaware is one of the few states that's maintained the distinction between law and equity, courts of law, courts of equity. Most other jurisdictions have fused the two so that the same judicial officers are responsible for overseeing legal remedies and equitable remedies. As a veteran and a graduate of that system, and I care to note here, you've both been nominated for the Third Circuit, court near and dear to my heart because I served as a law clerk there previously. As a veteran and graduate of that system where you were a vice chancellor, is that a form that you would recommend to other jurisdictions, including possibly the United States? Did most jurisdictions in the United States make a mistake when we fused law and equity?
Thank you so much for the question, Senator. I don't have a view on whether or not other jurisdictions made a mistake when they fused law and equity. Certainly Delaware does it differently, and as you said, I was in the court that is the Court of Equity. But in my view, the focus as a judicial officer, whether I am a judicial officer in the Court of Chancery as I've been, or on the Supreme Court, Delaware Supreme Court as I currently am, or if I'm so lucky to be confirmed on the Third Circuit, is simply ensuring that I approach every case with an open mind, and that the litigants in front of me are treated fairly and impartially, and that I decide cases based on the law and the facts of the case.
Right. Yeah, well said. And I don't have any particular opinion on it, but I do note there are reasons why a lot of our country's corporation law points to Delaware, because a lot of corporations, disproportionate share of them, hugely disproportionate share of them, are incorporated in Delaware. And I think one of the reasons for that has to do with the fact that in addition to having laws favorable to corporations, Delaware has a good legal, good judicial system. And so they approach that with confidence. And as a result of that, Delaware ends up having a disproportionate influence on laws pertaining to corporations. You were recently asked whether courts could extend the rationale and the ruling in Re Caremark International versus derivative litigation. This was a case, of course, dealing with the duty of care that a corporation's directors have to oversee company activities regarding environmental and social issues. You responded to the question by saying that the case is, quote, enabling in nature, and that it provides, quote, the ability to address evolving business challenges and expectations of their shareholders, close quote. Is it consistent with the protections of the First Amendment for the government to impose on a corporation director a duty of care over social issues, environmental issues, and social policy?
Can you repeat the question for me, Senator?
Yeah, so relating back to an answer that you provided, I believe this was at a symposium where a student asked you about this Caremark International case and asked you what you thought about it and whether that case can properly be interpreted to impose a duty of care to oversee corporate activities regarding social issues and environmental issues. And you said it was enabling in nature. So is Is that how you understand that? And if so, is that consistent with the First Amendment to require that?
What I was talking about when I said that, when I was talking about enabling in nature, I was generally talking about the DGCL, the Delaware General Corporation Law, our statute, and talking about that being broadly enabling in nature.
Great. Thank you. See, my time's expired. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Lee. Senator Coons.
And thank you, Chairman Durbin. Justice Montgomery Reeves, great to be with you again and to have a chance to have this whole committee understand exactly why you have garnered such incredibly broad support from our bench and bar, from our state's both legal and political community. I often talk about the unique nature of Delaware's legal community as a member of the Delaware Bar. You're an exemplar of that combination of character and community and excellence that I think has made our bench and our bar outstanding. It's not surprising to me, as my colleague Senator Carper referenced, that you receive letters of support from both the majority and minority in our state Senate, and that you were in many ways supported in your career by the former chancellor, who was also the chief counsel to our Governor Pete DuPont and our Governor Mike Castle. That is embedded in sort of the history of the Delaware bench. As a judge on the Chancery Court and as a chancellor, and as a justice on our Supreme Court, what do you think distinguishes the Delaware judiciary? And why do you think your experience, your significant experience in writing opinions on these two Delaware courts has prepared you to contribute to the Third Circuit Court of Appeals?
Thank you so much for the question, Senator. I'll start with just sort of Delaware and the way things are in Delaware. Delaware is a small state and we're a small bar. I see the judicial officers, the lawyers who are in front of me, not just in front of me, but at my son's soccer games, at church, at the grocery store. It's a very small state where you get to know people on a very human level. And so you're able to form, I've been able to form very, very close relationships. In terms of the two courts and the makeup of two courts, the Court of Chancery, as you said, is made up of a vice chancellor, six vice chancellors and the chancellor, who largely have significant corporate backgrounds and take very seriously, the work of that court and the business of that court. And the Supreme Court is made up of members who also, some of whom have a corporate background. That's part of what goes into that, as you said. And with respect to the opinion writing, the benefit of that, in my view, is, number one, just an exposure to a broad array of subject matters and being able to think through, learn quickly new areas of the law, getting up to speed, and then writing judicial opinions on them that are hopefully clear and really explain to the litigants precisely what we're doing and why.
One of the other things I talk about as someone who clerked for the Third Circuit for Judge Roth is the collegiality of Delaware's courts, but also the Third Circuit. The collegiality of some of our federal circuits has been somewhat strained as a reflection of our national challenge in terms of our ability to work well together. I think it speaks volumes about your nomination that our Chief Justice, C.J. Seitz, is here, our Chancellor, Kathleen McCormick. I believe all of the vice chancellors, literally the Court of Chancery could convene if necessary. I suspect there's available rooms, if you wish to render any decisions here. And the Federal Bar Association, the Barristers Association, as well as the ones I referenced earlier, sent letters of support. How would you bring some of the collegiality that you've experienced on the Court of Chancery, on the Supreme Court, how would you bring that to the Third Circuit, and what contribution do you think collegiality makes to a circuit court?
Thank you so much for the question, Senator. I have been very lucky to have amazing colleagues. As you heard, our courts in Delaware are balanced. They're made up of no more than a simple majority of the two political parties, but none of that matters when you are deciding cases. You're supposed to decide cases on the facts of the case and the applicable law. And all of my colleagues, every single one of them, have always approached cases in that way. Sometimes our outlook is a little different, but we all have the utmost respect for each other, and we walk into a room willing to listen to and learn from each other. Sometimes we agree and are able to reach a consensus, unanimous decision. Sometimes we disagree and someone is able to convince me or I'm able to convince another person. Or at other times, we reach a third alternative that we hadn't considered before. We sat down and conferred. But the most important thing is that we recognize the give and take that's necessary when you're deciding matters by panel, and we have the utmost respect for each other.
Well, thank you, Justice, and thank you to the members of the Delaware bench who've traveled here to support you today and to your family. I urge my colleagues to support your swift confirmation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Coons. Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to you both. Counselor, Ms. Chung, do you believe in racial quotas?
Senator, if I were faced with a question regarding racial quotas, I would carefully consider the binding Supreme Court precedent and Third Circuit precedent.
Yes, ma'am, excuse me if interrupting, but that's not what I'm asking. Let me stipulate that you will follow. I'll stipulate this for all my questions to each of you, that you will follow precedent. What I'm asking is about your beliefs. Do you believe in racial quotas?
Sir, if I were faced with that question, I believe the Supreme Court has ruled that in the context, for instance,
I know what the court's ruled. We both do. I'm just asking your personal beliefs. Do you believe in racial quotas?
Sir, I want to be very careful since I am a judicial nominee. I certainly wouldn't want to say something that would forecast for any future litigant how they thought I would rule.
I don't see the problem in you telling us your beliefs. I'm going to ask you one more time. Do you believe in racial quotas?
I'm sorry, Senator. Again, because I am a judicial nominee,
You're not going to answer them?
It would not be prudent for me
You're not going to
to
answer me? Okay.
offer an opinion on it.
All right. Do you believe, once again, I'll stipulate that you're going to follow precedent. Do you believe that abortion is an issue that should be decided by the states?
In the recent ruling in Dobbs, the Supreme Court did say that the question of abortion has been returned to the people and their elected
Yes, ma'am.
representatives.
But I know, and I'll stipulate that you'll follow Dobbs. But do you believe that abortion is an issue that should be decided by the states? I'm trying to understand what you believe.
Well, certainly under Dobbs, returning that issue to the people and their elected representatives does put it within the realm of the states.
Okay. Do you believe that that's the right decision?
Senator, I would not hesitate to apply Dobbs if I were faced with that.
Once again, maybe I'm not being clear. I'm sorry. I'm asking what you believe. Do you believe that abortion should be decided by the states as opposed to the federal government?
Senator, again, because I am a judicial nominee,
You're not going to answer?
I don't believe it would be prudent to offer an opinion that would allow future litigants to
All right.
think they could forecast.
Do you believe that prosecutors should take it upon themselves to decide not to prosecute an entire class of crimes, even though that the legislative body in that particular instance has designated the behavior as a crime?
Well, in my approximately or almost 2 decades as a prosecutor and now as United States Attorney, I have not found occasion to completely rule out
I'm asking
a
what
line
you
of
believe,
prosecution.
Counselor. I'm asking what you believe.
Well, as a prosecutor and as a United States Attorney, I believe that each investigation and matter should
Yes,
be
ma'am, but do you
determined.
believe a prosecutor should decide we both know what we're talking about. Do you believe that a prosecutor should take it upon themselves or himself or herself to say, I don't care what the legislature says, I'm not going to prosecute any shoplifting of stealing of any goods if it's less than $950. Do you agree with that or not?
Well, I would hope that my record as a prosecutor and United States Attorney speaks to that question. I have not
I'm asking
found
you,
occasion
I'm giving
to
you a
do that.
chance right now to speak to it. Tell me what you believe. Do you believe, I just gave you the example, do you believe that's a good thing or a bad thing?
I have not found occasion to rule out an entire line of prosecution.
Okay, but if someone did, do you agree with it or disagree with it? I don't think I'm being obtuse here. Just answer my question if you would. And if you're not, just tell me so I can move to the judge.
Senator, I have not found a reason to do that in my own practice. I have only considered...
Is that because you disagree with it?
Well, I have found that whether or not something reaches a federal interest for prosecution is something that has to be determined
All right.
on an
I
individual
understand.
case.
You're not going to answer me, and I really regret that. Let me ask you, Judge, in the time I have left, you wrote a report along with your colleagues regarding the bar admission in Delaware, and you said, quote, the bar exam likely serves as a barrier to the racial and ethnic diversity of attorneys in Delaware. Did you say that?
Thank you for the question, Senator. No, my colleagues and I did not write that report. That is a report that was written and delivered to the Supreme Court.
Did you vote on the report?
No, I did not vote on the report.
Do you disagree with that statement?
Will you read the statement again, Senator?
Sure. Quote, the bar exam likely serves as a barrier to the racial and ethnic diversity of attorneys in Delaware.
Thank you for reading the quote again.
You're welcome.
I believe that that's a question that needs to be analyzed and studied, and I have not
But
studied.
you were chairman of the committee, and your staff wrote this report.
So it was, if I may explain, it was,
Okay?
it was,
But I don't have much time.
well, it was not
Sorry.
my staff, so no, I
Okay.
wouldn't say my staff wrote
Fair
that
enough,
report.
fair enough, Judge. Do you agree, quote, that the Delaware bar exam serves as a barrier to the racial and ethnic diversity of attorneys in Delaware?
Senator, I believe that that is a complicated, complex question that requires analysis that I have not done.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. And now, let me see. Senator Padilla is not here, so it would be Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask the following two initial questions of every nominee who comes before any of the committees on which I sit. So I will ask you the initial questions, both of you. Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement related to this kind of conduct?
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
Both of you have been asked about judicial philosophy, and I very much agree with my colleague, Senator Whitehouse, and the conclusion that those judges and justices who describe themselves as originalists really use that, whatever it is, doctrine, belief, whatever you want to call it, as just a useful kind of a tool to justify outcome-driven decisions. So I think the two of you gave a really good answer of what your judicial philosophy is. For Justice Montgomery Reeves, you said you would decide cases based on the facts and applicable law. What more could we ask of a judge? And Ms. Chung, you said you would provide a fair, open hearing and apply precedent. Basically, I think both of you were saying that you would listen to the facts, listen to the litigants, and apply the law. That is a pretty good judicial philosophy, in my opinion. So to ask you whether you are an originalist, literalist, or what have you, I think that misses the point. As far as I'm concerned, the two of you really provide the kind of perspective that would enable you to be fair, objective judges for the Third Circuit. Ms. Chung, you mentioned that the only thing that was missing today would be your parents. Can you tell me a little bit about maybe their background? You noted that your grandfather was a judge in South Korea. Can you just tell me a little bit, did your parents immigrate to this country?
Yes, thank you for the question, Senator Hirono. My grandfather was not a judge, but he was one of the first prosecutors in South Korea. He grew up under Japanese occupation, was forced to drop out of school, and was able still somehow to get an education by correspondence while he worked full days as a child, and eventually was able to become one of the first prosecutors. My father's family, he also grew up in Korea, very poor, had no running water or heat. But yes, they immigrated to America. The first place to receive them and give them opportunities was Pittsburgh. So I'm so happy and grateful to be able to serve the community of Pittsburgh as the United States Attorney for the Western District of Pennsylvania.
And of course, both of them would be very proud of you.
I hope so.
So most of your time as an adult is spent in public service. Can you tell us why that is so important to you?
Yes, Senator Hirono, I would just say that that is what I find most fulfilling, is serving my community and trying to make it better. And I hope that I have done so, and I hope to continue to serve my community.
Thank you. Ms. Montgomery Reeves, you spent a lot of time doing pro bono work.
Yes.
And you obviously, both of you have a very widespread support. So I'm very impressed by the fact that both Republicans and Democrats support you. But can you tell me, Justice Montgomery Reeves, why pro bono work is so important to you? And also, I believe that you very much support diversity in the judiciary. Can you talk about both of these questions?
Sure. Thank you for the question. I'll start with pro bono work. I believe it's a privilege to be an attorney and to be able to, serve in this profession. And there's so many people out there who need quality counsel. And I just, feel personally that is an amazing way for us to give back and to be able to, give to people in need, is to help them through offering pro bono service. So everywhere I go, I encourage people to do that. With respect to diversity, I think diversity is incredibly important for all sorts of reasons. You often hear people talk about confidence and increasing confidence in our judicial system. I think that's important. But I also think that equally important is role models, right? We all tell our children they can do anything. I tell my little boys that. My mom told me that all the time. She still tells me that. But it's another thing to really see a judiciary that looks like our citizenry. And I think that diversity of all types are important. So thank you so much for the question.
Clearly, I share that view, and the fact that Justice Ketanji Jackson is on the Supreme Court is very important in terms of representation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Rono. Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thank you both for your service and your extraordinary contributions to our profession and to your communities. Ms. Chung, I was particularly interested to read about your work on hate crimes and the first prosecution, I think the first in the country under the Shepard-Byrd Hate Crime Prevention Act. Senator Hirono and I have worked together with Senator Moran on expanding the protections against hate crimes in the Jabara Hire No Hate Act, which was passed last spring. So there's a lot of interest in this committee in that area of law. I wonder if you could tell us perhaps some of the lessons, some of the insights that you've gained as a result of your work in this area that might be useful to us as we move forward.
Thank you, Senator. I think one of the things that I was perhaps or was saddened to learn was when I first joined the Civil Rights Division criminal section in the late 2000s, in 2009, I did not know that people still burnt crosses in people's yards and tried to drive them from their homes. So that was stunning for me to learn in 2009 that was still happening. And certainly my continued work in this realm has been informative in that, unfortunately, we see now, when I started, they were sort of individual actors doing maybe a one-off cross-burning or shooting, and sadly now we are seeing mass shootings more frequently. But, I've also seen a reason to hope, and even in the communities where these have happened, I would say that the communities find them repugnant and that they are not beliefs shared by the vast majority of Americans.
One of the lessons, I think, of a couple of cases, one of them in Connecticut, is that sometimes more effective than imprisonment or fines has been the requirement that the perpetrator, the defendant, the convicted individual be compelled to do community service in working with the group that he or she targeted. Have you observed that kind of community service being a form of punishment that not only deters but also educates?
Senator, I have not had vast experience in that realm, so I probably can't give a very informed opinion on it, but certainly I know that there are victims who have asked for a restorative justice aspect in that vein.
What do you think is the most effective deterrent to violent extremism?
That is a very big and weighty question, Senator. I don't think there are any easy answers, but I think certainly a greater civility amongst us cannot hurt.
Thank you for your answers. It's a big and weighty question, and I hope that you'll provide more of your insights, whether it's when you reach the bench or otherwise, and I'm going to be very proud to support both of you. Thank you for your service. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Blumenthal. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to both of the nominees. Justice Montgomery, you served as a co-chair of the Delaware Supreme Court's Diversity and Strategic Planning Steering Committee. The committee drafted a series of recommendations to improve the diversity of the Delaware legal profession. The report stated that the bar exam, quote, likely serves as a barrier to the racial and ethnic diversity of attorneys in Delaware, and recommended the creation of an alternative to the bar exam based on clerkships and recommendations. Justice Montgomery, I find that a remarkable recommendation. I'm Hispanic. I took the bar. I'm confident you took the bar and passed it. You and I have both known many extraordinary lawyers who are African American and Hispanic, who've taken the bar, who practiced, who served exemplary careers. Why is it well, let me ask you this. Do you believe that there's something about Hispanics and African Americans that prevents them from taking the bar exam and doing well on it?
Thank you for the question, Senator. That was a committee that was made up of a broad cross-section of attorneys, of judges, of citizens.
Justice, we have really limited time, so I would appreciate if you just answer the specific question.
Can you repeat the specific question?
Sure. Do you believe there's something about Hispanics and African Americans that prevents them from taking the bar exam and doing well on it?
No, I do not, Senator.
And do you believe, as you look at our cadre of attorneys, that what we really need is more people licensed to practice law who for whatever reason, can't pass the bar exam?
Senator, the recommendation that you read is a recommendation to the Delaware Supreme Court. The Delaware Supreme Court has not acted on that recommendation at all.
Do you agree with the recommendation, though? You were co-chair of the committee that made the recommendation, is that right?
I was a co-chair of the committee, but I did not vote on the recommendation.
Do you agree with the recommendation?
I think that our our Supreme Court would need to study very closely that recommendation, and it's not a recommendation that the Supreme Court itself has studied yet, and not a recommendation that we've accepted yet.
As co-chair of the committee that made the recommendation, did you examine the recommendations that your committee was making before it made them?
So this was not a situation where the Supreme Court or the co-chair was even directing the recommendation. We were truly soliciting information from others, and they made the recommendation.
I'm going to try again, and I know in your role as a judge, you ask questions and you expect counsel to answer them. So did you examine the recommendations of the committee you were co-chairing before the recommendations were made?
I saw the recommendations. I did not make an edit to any recommendation.
Okay. Ms. Chung, you've served as United States Attorney in Pennsylvania. You're also on the Attorney General's Advisory Committee. You have spoken publicly about the Attorney General's TEN initiative, Trafficking Ends Now. Do you think it's important to stop human trafficking?
Senator, as United States Attorney, we have dedicated many resources to prosecuting trafficking, human trafficking.
Let me ask you, to what extent do you think the Biden administration's refusal to enforce the law, which has resulted in 3.5 million people crossing illegally in the last year and a half, the highest rate of illegal immigration in 62 years, to what extent has that lawlessness from the department in which you work right now contributed to and fueled the human trafficking crisis we're seeing?
Well, Senator, when I take up as a prosecutor, now as United States Attorney, supervise human trafficking cases, they're very fact-specific as to each case.
Would human trafficking be less if the Biden administration enforced the law?
Well, Senator, there is trafficking across borders, but also within our borders, so I would have to...
Does catch and release contribute to human trafficking?
Senator, I do not have enough research or study on that
You don't know?
To know the answer to that.
You've been the chief prosecutor for a significant portion of Pennsylvania, and you don't know whether 3.5 million people coming in illegally because the Biden DOJ won't enforce the law, you don't know if that contributes to trafficking?
Senator, again, when we address human trafficking, it is on a case-to-case basis.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Right now, fentanyl is the leading cause of death for Americans 18 to 45. It has exploded under Joe Biden's refusal to enforce our border. Has that policy contributed to the over 100,000 people who've died of fentanyl overdoses in the past year?
Senator, again, when we prosecute our fentanyl cases...
Okay, you're declining to answer. Let me ask one final question. Last week, the White House press secretary said in front of the National Press Corps that people aren't walking across the border. It's just not happening. Was that a true statement?
Senator, I'm not familiar with that statement.
But is it true that no one is walking across the border and crossing illegally? Is that an accurate statement?
Senator, I do not have
You
the
don't know?
knowledge basis.
How do you prosecute a human trafficking case if you don't know where the people are being trafficked, how they're being trafficked?
Well, Senator, when we do prosecute those human trafficking cases, it is on a case-to-case basis, and in those instances, we do know where they're coming from. It is often interstate. The human trafficking statutes are about forced labor, and that can be from state to state. It can be across borders.
Thank you.
Senator Booker?
I really appreciate this opportunity to sit before you both. You should just get comfortable and relax. I have some substantive questions. I'll submit them for the record. I just want to say a few things. First of all, we do have real serious problems in this country, and the positions to which you all are being nominated are gravely important to our country's success. And I've heard a lot of comments from colleagues on both sides of the aisle. Let me just first say, obviously, the deaths of despair going on in our country are really, really serious. Ms. Chung, I know that you take them seriously, and I also know they're not to be viewed by judges in any partisan way. In fact, substantively, their overdoses, deaths have gone up under the last 3 presidents in stunning ways, and should call the best of us to unite and find solutions. But really what I want to mark is just how I continue to sit here over the last year and a half and be amazed at these judiciary hearings. I've watched for 9 years as a senator, judicial hearings, there's just been nothing like this before. Both of you are really not the normal people that come before the Senate, before this president. This president has now nominated, if I'm correct, over 70% of his nominees to the federal bench have been women, and half of those have been women of color. Now, the two people sitting before me, you both are so much more than your race and gender, but dear God, you all are both trailblazers. You're glass ceiling breakers. And, Ms. Chung, I think you would be the fourth, if I have that correct, the fourth Asian American woman to serve in the federal circuit. As the fourth black guy ever elected to the United States Senate popularly, I know what that means, and I know the challenges it took to get you here. You are utterly extraordinary. And I read your bio, I get chills, because not just the importance of your accomplishments, but you mentioned in your opening statement about your parents who are not alive right now. I think they are with you right now. I think they are here. I think you are a physical manifestation of their love. And I think that they are rejoicing along with this nation that someone like you is sitting before this vaunted committee. And I just want to say how pleased I am that you're willing to serve, that you've lived a life of service, that you've helped make this country better. When we talk about your ancestry, you are a great American story. You are a great American. And I just, for one, thank God that you're here. And I thank your parents who are not. And again, when you have two of my favorite Delawareans singing your praises, and we're number 4, you're number 1. You're the first ever black woman on the Supreme Court in Delaware. I just again want to celebrate you and thank you for your willingness to serve in this significant position. Both of you are serving at a time where our country is desperately in need of folks that have the depth of understanding and the diversity of lived experiences that you have. You can't help but bring that to the bench. I think that your experiences make you deeper in empathy and understanding. I think the challenges you've had to overcome make you more insightful to the struggles of others. And so I just am happy today, and I want to say I'm going to have to leave, so I won't be here for the second panel, but to Kelly Brisbane Hodge, to Mia Perez, also two extraordinary trailblazers that are a tribute to this President of the United States. You used the word hope, Ms. Chung, and to me, that is what this country has always been about. We've never been a country that has been rid of bigotries and hate and division, but it is people that stubbornly, if not defiantly, believe in this nation, believe in her promise, that have helped us to heal and overcome so many dark chapters and bring in brighter promises for the future. Today is a day that is not normal to me. Seeing you two sitting there, I want you to know you are sourcing my soul that is weary right now of partisan divisions in this country. You are sourcing my soul with deeper and greater hope for this country. And I commend the two of you and all the family that sits behind you physically and all the ancestors that sit behind you spiritually. This is a day of hope and promise, and I want to say thank you.
Thank you, Senator Booker. Senator Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to the nominees. Thank you for being here. Ms. Chung, let me start with you. You were talking just a minute ago, I think, about human trafficking with Senator Cruz. Is that right? Did I hear that right? And this has been a priority of yours, I think, in your work as U.S. Attorney. Is that correct? Fair to say?
Yes, Senator.
So you are on an advisory committee to the U.S. Attorney General, to Merrick Garland. Is that right?
Yes.
And you stated in your questionnaire that this advisory committee, and this is your quote, elevates the voices of U.S. attorneys in department policies. Have I got that right?
Yes.
And one of those policies is combating human trafficking, correct?
Certainly.
You have talked a lot about the importance of anti-trafficking efforts, and human trafficking, just so we're all clear, includes sex trafficking, of course, but also includes labor trafficking. Is that right?
That's right, Senator.
And you probably prosecuted some of these cases. Is that correct?
I have been involved in allegations of forced labor.
Yeah.
Cases involving allegations of forced labor.
Understood. So when we're talking about labor trafficking, we're also talking about kidnapping and human smuggling across the southern border. Is that right?
Cases of forced labor can certainly involve those types of activities.
So the New York Times reported just a month or two ago this fact, and I'm going to quote now from the Times. Migrant smuggling on the U.S. southern border has evolved over the past 10 years from a scattered network of freelance coyotes into a multi-billion dollar, that's a billion with a B, multi-billion dollar international business controlled by organized crime, including some of Mexico's most violent drug cartels. And then the Times goes on to report about the cartels kidnapping children so that illegal immigrants can try to pose as asylum-seeking families. We've heard reports about women being abducted and raped as part of illegal immigration rings. We hear about cartels kidnapping and torturing other people, holding them for ransom until their relatives in the U.S. pay to have them released, and then illegally smuggling them into the United States. I'm sure you're familiar with this. I mean, this is the work that you do. All of this is human trafficking. All of it is tragic, and all of it is increasing. So here's what I'm coming around to. I'm just curious about your work with the Attorney General. Are you advising him to crack down on human trafficking at the border? Are you advising him to enforce our immigration laws at the border to stop this terror that is occurring with women and children in particular, but frankly, involving all people, labor trafficking, sex trafficking? Are you advising him to this on this topic and to this end?
Senator Hawley, as a member of the Attorney General's Advisory Committee, I can speak to the fact that I'm on that and that we do, when asked, provide input of the United States Attorney's community positions on issues.
Has he asked about this issue? Has he asked about, given your expertise in trafficking, has he asked about how to stop the crisis of labor trafficking and sex trafficking at our southern border?
Well, certainly violent crime is a very high priority for the Department of Justice, and one that is frequently discussed.
But does he have a plan to stop the trafficking at the border? Are you involved in that? Have you been involved in any work to develop a plan to stop the sexual exploitation of women and children, to stop the exploitation of migrant workers into this country, to stop the exploitation of these vulnerable populations by cartels and organized crime? Have you been involved in a plan, developing a plan to stop that at the DOJ?
And Senator, the reason I just want to be careful that I'm speaking to what I can talk about publicly, but of course I can't speak to deliberative or work product. But what I can say is that I have not been asked to weigh in on the specific issue that you have asked.
It's too bad. Go ahead.
However, as a member of the Department of Justice and as a United States Attorney, violent crime has been my top priority, and I have done much to try to address that.
Well, I'm disappointed that the Attorney General's panel has not looked at human trafficking, but I can't say I'm surprised, because this Attorney General and this administration, frankly, has turned a blind eye to the crisis at our border that comes at a very real cost, a very, very real cost that you know, because you've seen these crimes. You've seen the results of this, and you've seen the results of what happens when you allow organized crime and violent cartels to control our border and to use human beings as assets to be traded upon and exploited in order to drive their profits. And that's what's happening every day, and this administration's allowing it. Justice Montgomery Reeves, let me come to you just briefly. You've been asked several times, I've heard the questions about your work as co-chair of the Delaware Supreme Court's Diversity Strategic Planning Steering Committee. That's a mouthful, but you've been asked about this. I just want to ask you about one thing in the report. The report talks about how important it is for the Delaware Supreme Court, I'm going to quote now, to take steps to reduce implicit bias and identity threat in the court environment. And it goes on to say that one of the things that might reduce identity threat is to get rid of the historic portraits of some of the white justices who've served on the court. Can you explain to me what identity threat is and why getting rid of portraits of judges and justices who've served on the courts would help with that?
Thank you so much for the question, Senator. I am not familiar with the term identity threat. So I don't have a I don't have a definition for you. I can't give you a definition of.
It's in the report, though. I mean, I'm quoting, to take steps to reduce implicit bias and identity threat in the court environment. I mean, this is your report.
Well, I understand, but one thing that I've attempted to explain is that I didn't draft the report. We had an entire committee that was creating a report to be delivered to the Supreme Court.
You signed off on it, though, didn't you?
So there wasn't a sign-off necessarily on the report.
Your name's on it, though.
I understand. I was a co-chair of the committee, but I didn't draft all the words to the report. I didn't draft the recommendations to the report. The Supreme Court is considering the report, and we haven't done anything with that particular recommendation.
So you don't know what identity threat is?
Well, I did not put those words in there, and I'm not entirely sure what whoever drafted that specific one meant by that one.
It seems kind of crazy to me, I have to say. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I want to clarify this because you've had three people ask questions about it. I think I get the answer. Apparently, it's still in doubt to some. We're talking about recommendations made by a committee to you. Is that correct?
That's correct.
These are not recommendations that you personally wrote or were involved in writing?
That's correct.
You did not vote for or against those recommendations?
That's correct.
Some other body is now deciding if there's any action to be taken?
The Supreme Court is considering what to do with the recommendations.
That's pretty clear, isn't it? And the questions that have been asked over and over again suggest otherwise, and you've said over and over again just what I said. So I think, is there anything more you want to say on the subject to make sure it's clear?
Thank you for the chance to clarify, Chairman. What happened is that there was a committee that was created to analyze diversity in Delaware. In the bar, that committee was purposefully made up of a large group of people who have an interest in the issue to consider the issue. The Supreme Court wanted to get people's honest views about what the recommendations might be. So we did not identify, exclude, tell people what they should think or make as recommendations. We accepted the recommendations that were provided to us. And now the Supreme Court is considering which recommendations it will and will not take and implement.
Mr. Chairman.
Certainly. Senator Kennedy.
Mr. Chairman, I think you mischaracterized my questions.
Oh, no, sir. I wasn't referring to you at all.
I'm glad to hear that because my questions of the judge were, and I never got an answer. Did she agree or disagree with the recommendations?
Senator, I was not referring to you at all. You've asked that question, and most nominees have given the same answer as these nominees, but it's your right to ask that question. And so I was referring to this so-called report involving the Supreme Court.
I was too. And if you have a second round, I'm going to ask it again.
Well, there's no plan.
Does the judge agree or disagree with the recommendations?
Senator,
I'm not really interested in how many lawyers can dance on the head of a pin.
Senator,
I'm just interested in hearing whether the judge agrees or disagrees.
Senator, you're doing the same thing that we've done when the tables were turned. Try to get these nominees to say what their personal views are, and most of them think it through and believe that they can't do that, and it makes them sound as if they don't have a personal
Well,
view.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's the purpose of the Judiciary Committee.
Well, you're entitled to your opinion.
Let me just finish my thought. I'm entitled to my opinion. I mean, we're confirming these nominees for lifetime appointments. They're not elected. You don't think it's relevant what they believe?
I think you create a problem for them that jeopardizes their role as judges.
When I just ask them what they believe?
May I finish my thought?
Certainly, I apologize.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that they understand that if they start expressing their personal views, as Ms. Chung has said repeatedly, it's a forecast of the future, and they're trying their best to say law, facts, precedent, and stick with it. And I think that's what we expect of judges.
Well, I just disagree, Mr. Chairman. I think people's personal beliefs, have they thought about the world? Have they thought about the issues that are central to American democracy? I think that's perfectly appropriate. I'm surprised that no, and this isn't meant to be personal, but that you haven't directed the witnesses to answer our questions.
We asked the same question to Trump nominees and got the same response. This is predictable, course of action on this committee. We try to probe as deeply as we can, and witnesses don't always go along with the extent of our probe.
Well, recently, they never do.
Well, under Trump's nominees, they never did either.
Well, I questioned them too, as you recall.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I just, since I think that last back and forth was directed implicitly at me, I think you factually misstated the record, though, and maybe I'm wrong.
Let's get this straight, because I...
Well, can I just, yeah,
Sure.
so here's, I think, maybe I'm wrong about this, I thought that the justice was the co-chair of this Diversity Strategic Planning Steering Committee, and that entity issued a report to the Delaware Supreme Court. You said that some group made recommendations to the justice. I don't think that's right. I think she co-chaired a committee that made recommendations to the Delaware Supreme Court, and her testimony's been the Supreme Court hasn't acted on those recommendations.
Let her respond.
Sure.
It is correct that I'm the co-chair of the committee that made the recommendations, but what I was trying to clarify is that there's a subgroup, there are 5 subgroups that made recommendations. During those deliberations, the co-chairs, myself and the Chief Justice, did not make recommendations. We did not identify specific recommendations for people. We didn't strike down recommendations for people. We didn't say, yes, we like those, no, we don't like the other ones. We allowed the subcommittees to create their own recommendations. We didn't change the recommendations at all as they went into the report. And those recommendations went in as is to the Supreme Court. And as the entire Supreme Court, our analysis as the Chief Justice and myself would be with the rest of the Supreme Court.
Understood. My only point, Mr. Chairman, is, and I think what I heard Senator Cruz's question. I can't speak for him. I'll just speak for myself. My point is that the justice co-chaired the panel. I think it's reasonable to ask her about the content of the report that they made. And if she doesn't want to answer the questions per your exchange with Senator Kennedy, that's fine.
Suggestion she's dodging the question, how much more explicit can she be? The presumption seems to be that she wrote the recommendations, and it's clear she did not. She said it repeatedly, and you won't accept it. That's just a fact. And so it is an unusual situation, but best I can determine, she gathered the information and passed it along without a vote of approval or without any scrutiny on her person.
But, Mr. Chairman, I just respectfully disagree. I don't think that's not what I asked the witness. I asked her, does she agree or disagree with the recommendations? Forget the report.
That's another question, Senator.
But I never got an answer.
Oh, and I don't think you would from a Trump nominee either.
But we don't have Trump. I pressed a lot of Trump nominees, as you well know, and voted against a bunch of them. And they helped kill 4 or 5 that I didn't think were qualified. But I don't agree with your revisionist history, no disrespect, in the last 10 minutes. I asked the witness 4 or 5 times, do you agree or disagree? And I didn't get an answer. Now, you can call that dodging the question. If you want to, that's a little pejorative to me, but I never got an answer, and I don't think that's inappropriate for me to ask. That's the issue.
Senator, by virtue of your position on the committee, you're entitled to ask what you wish, and I'm glad you had that chance. If there's nothing further to come before this panel, I want to thank both of you for joining us this morning, and our committee will take up your nominations at a later date. If you receive questions in writing, please respond to them promptly so we can move this along as we're nearing the end of this congressional year. So thank you very much for both of you being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
And now we have a second panel, and the witness table will be arranged accordingly. So there are 4 district court nominees on this panel. If they would approach the witness table and stand me for a moment, we'll administer the oath. Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm the testimony you're about to give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? The record reflect that all 4 of the nominees have answered in the affirmative, and we'll go from my left to right, which means that Judge Hodge will be first. 5 minutes, all yours.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Durbin and Ranking Member Grassley, for scheduling this hearing and inviting me to appear before you, as well as the other members of this esteemed committee today. I'm truly grateful for this opportunity. I also want to thank President Biden for the honor he has bestowed upon me by nominating me to serve as a United States District Court Judge for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. I am deeply honored and humbled by the nomination. I also want to thank my home state senators, Senator Kaise and Senator Toomey, for their support, thoughtful remarks, and kind introduction. Again, I am honored and humbled by the confidence you have placed in me by recommending my name to the President. As I sit before you today, I do so because of the love, support, and encouragement of those who are seated behind me, along with numerous family and friends across the country who, while not present in this room, have also loved, supported, and encouraged me throughout my life. To my colleagues from my firm, Fox Rothschild, and all those that I have worked alongside throughout my career, I feel your presence with me at this moment, and for that, I cannot thank you enough. To my mom and dad, Shirley and Fred Brisbane, I love you both very much. You provided me with endless opportunities so that I could enjoy limitless potential. I am me in every way because of you. To my brother and sister, Dawn and Todd, thank you for being the protectors, supporters, and advocates for your little sister. I love you both. To those who are here with me today, my cousin Dana Banks, and childhood friends, Dr. Marissa Rogers, MD, and Catherine Barbieri, Esquire, you are the most brilliant, beautiful people I know. I'm so lucky to have each of you in my life and love you for all that you have done and continue to do for me. Last but certainly not least, to my husband, John, and my son, I've saved the best for last because you both are the best of me, see the best in me, and bring out the best in me. To my son, you will forever be the greatest gift in my life, who has given me more joy than I could ever imagine. I love you more than words can express. To my husband, you have been and will always be my best friend. You have been my staunchest supporter, closest advisor, and necessary critic when I have needed all of it the most. I love you. Chair Durbin and Ranking Member Grassley, thank you again for your time this morning, and I look forward to answering the committee's questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Grassley, and all the members of this committee for your consideration. Thank you to President Biden for nominating me. The opportunity to serve our country is an honor and a joy. And thank you to Senator Kaise and Senator Toomey for your years of service to the people of Pennsylvania, for your support of my nomination, and your generous introductions. I'd like to thank my family and friends who are here today and who brought me here today. At the top, my amazing wife, Kate. For over 20 years, she has been my best friend, most loyal partner, and loving mother to our children. If you know her, you know she is a force of nature. I owe her immeasurably more than a thank you. Our 3 kids, Sally, Eleanor, and Bill, are here as well. They're thoughtful, funny, and insightful beyond their years, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for them. Kate's parents, Steve and Carol, are here as well. I thank them for their kindness and support over the years. I couldn't wish for better in-laws or grandparents for my kids. My mom and dad, Jackie and Frank, have both passed, but they would have loved to be here. They were brilliant, but humble and loving parents, and they taught me the lessons that I rely on each and every day. And recently, our family suffered the loss of our dearest friend and tireless supporter, Sally Nassau, who my daughter is named after. They are loved and missed. My former boss, Chief Judge Kimberly Moore, is here today, and I thank her for her mentorship and the lessons that she taught me. My good friends and former co-clerks, Adam Greenfield and Adam Kessler, are here as well. I'd also like to thank those who couldn't be here, including my sisters, Karen and Donna, and all my family and friends who are supporting me from around the country. I'm grateful for their support and good wishes and look forward to answering the committee's questions.
Thank you, Ms. Perez.
Good morning. I'd like to start by thanking Chairman Durbin and Ranking Member Grassley for scheduling this hearing today and the committee for considering my nomination. I would also like to thank President Biden for the honor of this nomination and Senators Kaise and Toomey for the trust and confidence they have placed in me and their kind words of introduction this morning. It is truly the greatest honor of my professional life. I would not be here today without the unwavering love and support of my family. Most importantly, my mother, Luz Marin, who at the age of 7 moved from Ponce, Puerto Rico to Brooklyn, New York with her parents and siblings. She instilled in me a love of learning and nurtured my dream of becoming a judge. My father, Bruce Roberts, whose parents, my grandparents, met after the Second World War while my grandfather was stationed in Japan as a medic with the United States Army. My grandmother, who is not here today with us, but with who I keep in my heart, came to this country without knowing the language and without family to raise her biracial children in America. I know you are smiling down on us today. My brothers, Gabriel and Victor, whose love has always served to ground me in all that I do, I am lucky to be your sister. My aunt, Rosie Madison, who has stood by me in support constantly throughout my life. I'd also like to acknowledge the extraordinary work of my chamber staff, Patrick Mountney and Allison Hunter, who day in and day out work hard to serve the citizens of Philadelphia and who do so with distinction. My husband, Paul Perez, and our children for their encouragement throughout my career. And our youngest, 4-year-old Daniel, who is present today, he inspires me to be a better person, mother, and jurist, and most importantly, always keeps me laughing. I would also like to thank my extended family, cousins, aunts, uncles, colleagues, mentors, friends, an entire court family at the 1st Judicial District of Pennsylvania who have supported me over the years. It is an honor to be nominated, and if confirmed, it would be my privilege to continue my public service as a United States District Judge. And with that, I welcome your questions.
Thank you very much. Judge Scott?
Good morning, Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Grassley, and all other members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. I'd like to first thank President Biden for my nomination to serve as a jurist as a United States District Court judge in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. It's an honor and a privilege to be nominated for such a position that would serve my community and my country. I'd also like to thank Senators Kaise and Senator Toomey from my home state of Pennsylvania for their kind remarks here this morning, their confidence in my abilities, and their support of my nomination by the President of the United States. If I may, I'd like to take this time now to introduce my family who joins me here today. First and foremost, my mother and father, Shirley Scott and John Scott. They have always been, and I know they always will be, my biggest cheerleaders and my biggest supporters. They both instilled in me the value of hard work, perseverance, and achieving dreams through education. They are joined here today by my sisters, Tracy Scott, Mia Campbell, and Tanae Scott. They're not only my siblings, my sisters, but they're my best friends. And last, but certainly not least, they're joined by my daughter, Layla, who's excited to be here, but upset because she's missing her second day of school. Layla inspires me every single day to be the best person that I can be, so that I can inspire her. And I hope that I continue to inspire her for the rest of my life. I also want to acknowledge the many family members who are not able to be here today, including my stepmother, Robin, my brothers, Amari and Joseph, my many friends and colleagues and court staff who support me every single day in all of my endeavors. They're not able to be here, but I know that they are cheering me on and supporting me and hopefully watching on C-SPAN or on the live link here. Again, I thank the committee for considering my nomination, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much. I wondered as you approached the table, the 4 of you, why my blood pressure was going up, and then I checked your backgrounds, and it turns out 3 out of 4 of you are law school professors. And it just brought me back to those wonderful days at Georgetown Law when I was praying no one would ask me a question. So the tables are turned today, and as chair, I get to ask questions of you. And the first thing I want to comment has been already noted, but worth repeating. The fact that both senators support you as a group is significant. In the nation we live in, the time we live in, a time when we're divided terribly on political grounds, The fact that Bob Casey and Pat Toomey could reach an agreement on you is quite a tribute to you and to them. We hope to encourage more of that type of conduct, and there have been good examples of it, of bipartisanship moving in that direction. And I think it's well worth noting, even if it's repeating what has been said. I wouldn't have time to ask each of you a question, but I'm going to ask Judge Perez a question. I'm very concerned about the dangerous role of ghost guns currently in play in gun violence in this country. Police chiefs and prosecutors have come to me and said, Senator, do not ignore what's going on. There are guns that you can purchase which have no identifying marks on them. They cannot be traced, and they are being used more and more in crime for that very reasons. So I want to ask you about the case you presided over this year, Judge Perez, dealing with charges related to ghost guns. In Commonwealth versus Williams, the defendant sold 15 homemade, untraceable ghost guns to a man he knew to be a convicted murderer, a person who would have been disqualified from buying a gun in ordinary commerce under the federal laws. You sentenced the defendant to 15 to 30 years of incarceration. Can you tell us more about these underlying offenses? Because I'm certain that these are cases we're going to see more of.
Thank you for the question, Senator. With regards to Mr. Williams' case, he was an individual, as you indicated, that was accused of making 15 ghost guns in the basement of his home while his daughter was present in that home. What's interesting in Mr. Williams' case is that he was a veteran of the United States military and had previously been deployed to war zones and understood the effect that firearms had on individuals, the devastation that they could cause. Additionally, he was selling these guns to an individual who was convicted of a homicide. As you indicated, ghost guns are literally impossible to track. They can be made in the basement of individuals' homes, and they are definitely contributing to the amount of gun violence that we are seeing being perpetrated within our communities.
Judge Scott, if I can ask you a question too. It says here that during your time as public defender, you tried approximately 160 cases to verdict, judgment, or final decision. As a state court judge, you presided over approximately 600 trials in the past 6 years. Is that correct?
That's actually incorrect. I've presided over many more trials than 600, almost 2,000 cases that I have presided over, many of them over 50 to verdict and over 600 as bench trials.
You have faced questions of sentencing and incarceration repeatedly. In that vast number of cases, I couldn't even start to count what they might be. We have become more and more sensitive to issues of mental illness and addiction. What can you tell us by way of advice as a judge over your lifetime of experience in dealing with that sort of a challenge?
It is a challenge, Senator. Thank you for the question. Over the past almost now 7 years as a judge, certainly I have presided over a number of cases and had to sentence a number of individuals who have had both mental health problems as well as drug and alcohol addictions. It's a significant problem in our community. It is a problem, obviously, that needs treatment. Individuals sometimes need incarceration, and in addition to their incarceration, they need to be treated while in custody with both mental health counseling, treatment, medication, as well as addiction services. And then there are times, depending on the circumstances and the need, that individuals are able to remain in the community while receiving those same services. Obviously, if those services are provided in both the mental health context as well as the drug and alcohol addiction context, it certainly will prevent recidivism in the future.
I would just speak for my state and what I have witnessed. I'm sorry to say that despite some valiant efforts by many people, the mental health treatment and addiction treatment is woefully inadequate in my state, considering the challenge. And certainly when it comes to preemptive care, we just aren't there. If we have a child who has been a victim of trauma in school, we all hope that they'll be taken care of immediately. Of course, seldom does that happen. Is that your experience?
That has been my experience. I think we are making strides in the right direction, but I do believe that there are certainly more improvements that are necessary.
To the other nominees, no disrespect, but we just had 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Senator Kennedy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to each of you. Ms. Hodge, I'll start on the end. I believe you have written, and I want to quote, "The root cause of the killing of black people in America is systemic racism." Did you say that?
Thank you for the question, Senator. Yes,
You're
that
welcome.
was a statement that was in an article that I believe I wrote shortly after the killing of George Floyd.
Right. And you believe that the root cause of black-on-black crime in America is systemic racism?
Thank you for that question, Senator. I will
You're
say,
welcome.
I'm going to clarify. In that writing and in that quote, the quote is accurate. I would revise it to say that it's one of the root causes. And to your point about black-on-black crime or crime in the country generally, any crime, there are many causes as to why people engage in criminal activity.
Okay. You also have advocated, quote, reallocating police funding. What do you mean by that?
In that, I believe in a different, or maybe the same article or something else that
It was
I
the
had
same
written.
one.
Same article. I believe I listed a number of things that have been proposed, and I believe were being considered by Congress in following George Floyd.
Right.
In terms
What do you think? How do you think we should reallocate police funding?
Well, I will clarify that I wasn't advocating for the reallocation. That was one of the things that was listed, but I believe
I
that.
think you were, actually. Your quote is you advocated for, quote, reallocating police funding, and I'm just asking what you have in mind.
Well, Senator, it has been some time, so I will say that I may not be recalling the entirety of the statement correctly. I thought I had listed it as one of the things that was proposed, but to your question, I believe that when a body such as Congress has the ability to make that consideration.
No, I'm asking what you think, how you think we should reallocate police funding.
Senator, I believe that that is something that is left to the body of Congress. I don't have an opinion to offer on that.
You don't have any opinion whatsoever?
I believe that that's something that is left to those who are determining
All right.
policy.
You also advocated in the same article that we should eliminate qualified immunity for police officers. Is that correct?
I would state that that is listed again as one of the listed proposed ideas that was being discussed. Actually, I
No, ma'am,
extracted.
you advocated for it.
Senator, I extracted that from what was being discussed by Congress at the time following George Floyd.
No,
So
ma'am, you advocated for it. I'm looking at, the speech was entitled, quote, mandate for change will require collaboration. And you advocated eliminating qualified immunity for police officers. And I'm just asking you, did you advocate for it? And if so, do you still have that position?
Senator, thank you for the question. I did not advocate for the elimination of qualified immunity, and qualified immunity is a doctrine within which has been recognized by the court, and if I were so fortunate to be confirmed, I would abide by the Supreme Court precedent and apply the law as it is stated.
Okay, so you deny advocating for it?
I would, to your question, Senator, I did not advocate for the elimination of qualified immunity. I listed it as one of the things that was being discussed and presented as something that was being dialogued by this body amongst others across the country as to be considerations.
Okay. I don't think that's accurate. Judge Perez, I believe you have said that, quote, the drug war is a joke. Drugs are all about economics. It's like fighting a staph infection with neosporin. You're not getting at the underlying causes for trafficking, education, and poverty. Did you say that?
Senator, I made that statement back, I believe, in 2015
Right.
when I was running for judge for the Court of Common Pleas, and as an advocate, I did make that statement. Yes, sir.
Okay. Why do you think the drug war is a joke?
Sir, I would say that my choice of language in 2015 as I was running for judge and campaigning was colorful. I will say this, that in my time as both a defense attorney as well as a judge sitting in criminal court, what we are seeing is a large percentage of individuals who are arrested for smaller amounts of narcotics.
Let me ask
that
you one
in
more
particular,
question. Excuse me for interrupting, but the chairman's given us 5 minutes for 4 nominees for lifetime appointments. Last year, DEA estimates that enough fentanyl came across our southern border to kill every man, woman, and child in America 7 times. 7 times. And I'll bet you just about everybody in this room knows someone who had a teenager who died of fentanyl poisoning. Do you think that's a joke?
sir, it's not that it is a joke. It is the full context was with regards to whether or not it is an effective measure for stemming the tide of narcotics use in our communities.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to all the nominees. Ms. Hodge, I want to ask you about an article that you wrote for Bloomberg about affirmative action in universities. You argued that opposition to race-based affirmative action, I'm going to quote you now, is rooted in part in the belief that racism and systems that imposed barriers based on race in American society no longer exist, end quote. I had been under the impression that the argument was actually the opposite, that race-based affirmative action imposes race-based barriers on particular racial groups. Now, your article was about the Harvard case, so I take it you're familiar with that case. Is that fair to say?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. Yes, I was writing an article following the decision that was made by the First Circuit in that particular piece of Bloomberg.
Gotcha. So the court documents, court filings from that case, from the Harvard case, state that, quoting now, Asian Americans needed SAT scores that were 140 points higher than white students, all other quantifiable variables being equal, to get into these elite schools. The same court filings also show that Asian American students who had the same score as African American students were about 25% likely to get into Harvard, whereas the African American student was 95% likely to get into Harvard. So basically, what the documents show is, and I don't know if there's much dispute about this, that Asian Americans are systemically discriminated against with these race-based policies. That's a problem, don't you think?
Senator, I will say, and thank you for the question, I'm not intimately familiar with the entirety of the report or all of the information that's contained in it. I know it is cited in the case. However, I would say that with the case that was before the court and currently now is on certiorari and coming before the Supreme Court, that the issue of race as a factor in admissions and utilized in universities is obviously what's going to be contemplated by the court, and understanding that the strict scrutiny standard is applicable. It would be a determination as to whether or not there's a compelling governmental interest, and if it's narrowly tailored to afford that interest for all who are asserting the argument.
Yeah, but is it a problem? I guess my question is it a problem for universities to make it harder for members of a certain race to be admitted to their university, to do it deliberately? Is that a problem? That's what your article's about. I'm asking. You've expressed an opinion on this, so I'm just asking about your opinion. Don't you think that's a problem?
Senator, thank you for the question. The article was written in the context of really providing, in essence, a procedural roadmap of what had transpired.
Yeah, but you expressed, though, I'm sorry to interrupt you, it's just I've got so little time and I have the article in front of me. I enjoyed reading it. But you express your personal views, which is fine, by the way. I'm just asking about them. Your personal views on this case, and you say that the arguments of those who are arguing against Harvard's policies are actually anti-diversity. You say that they fail to overcome a principle that's of paramount importance to the country. I'm quoting you now, diversity matters, and its value is immeasurable, especially in education. I'm just asking you whether or not having Asian Americans present and able to be admitted on a fair basis with members of other racial groups, if that isn't, in fact, an interest that serves diversity. I mean, don't you think that that's important?
Senator Hawley, to your question, and thank you again for it, what has been stated by the court through years of dialogue and deliberation over this specific issue of affirmative action is that diversity matters
And does that include for Asian Americans?
for everyone.
And that's your personal opinion, too?
I'm stating based upon how the court has, I'm not putting my personal opinion. I believe that if I'm so fortunate to be confirmed to the district court, that my personal opinion would have no role in the deliberations that I would conduct. I would base all of my decisions on the facts presented, the arguments presented by counsel and or the individual litigants, as well as the law, and apply the law and precedent to whatever's presented to me.
But surely you could agree with the statement at this level of generality that deliberate discrimination against Asian Americans is wrong. Is that fair to say?
Senator Hawley, I say that discrimination is prohibited, and people who are discriminated against under the law, obviously the work I also do in terms of employment discrimination, if someone is discriminated against based on a protected category, that is something that that's protected against under the Constitution.
But it's not wrong. I mean, you can't just say it's wrong. I'm trying to understand why you're splitting the hairs the way you're splitting them.
Senator, I'm not splitting hairs. Discrimination is illegal.
But my question to you is, discrimination against Asian Americans is wrong, yes?
Discrimination against anyone is wrong. Yes.
Judge Perez, let me just finally ask you here, and I'll have some more questions for others of you for the record, but our time is very limited. I just want to ask you about something you said in some interviews when you were running for judge. You were critical of mandatory minimum sentences. You called them political in nature. Is that still your view, that mandatory minimum sentences are problematic? You're an opponent of those?
Thank you for the question, Senator. Senator, in my almost 7 years now as sitting as a state court judge and hearing matters that involved, to this day, mandatories at times, including third strike laws, I have been consistent in my application of those and following the law as directed by statute and by the case law under Pennsylvania law.
But do you think that they're political in nature, and are you an opponent of them? I guess is my question. I'm just asking about what you said about your own views. So is that still the case, or have you changed your mind?
At this point, sir, my perspective is very different. I made those statements when I was an advocate, and being a neutral jurist for the past 7 years, it's now 100% my job, day in and day out, to apply the law to the facts as I see them in my courtroom. And if the mandatory minimum applies, I will apply that mandatory minimum.
And are you still anti-death penalty inherently? You said you were anti-death penalty inherently. Is that still the case?
Again, Senator, at the time that I said that, I was an advocate who previously did work in death penalty cases. At this time, and for the last 7 years, I've been a jurist with a record of abiding by the law and applying that law to the cases before me.
Thank you, Senator Hawley. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Hodge, I have been concerned for some time that this administration, in making judicial nominations, is not seeking out people who will fairly and impartially follow the law, but rather is systematically nominating people who are partisans, people whose views are sharply out of the mainstream, and people who are extreme. As I look at your record, I see considerable indicia that you follow that same pattern. Is it true that you previously stated, quote, "The root cause of the killing of black people in America is systematic racism"?
Thank you for the question, Senator. To a colleague who just asked a similar question moments ago, that statement was made in an article that I wrote following the killing of George Floyd, and I provided what I would say is a revision to that, which is it's one of the root causes. But the statement as written is what I did right.
Well, you also described possible solutions to what you described as, quote, the pandemic of racism, and you specified two in particular: eliminating qualified immunity and, quote, reallocating police funding. Now, everyone in this committee hearing room knows that reallocating police funding is a commonly used phrase that is also described as defunding the police or even abolishing the police. Do you still think, to use your phrase, reallocating police funding is a good idea?
Senator, thank you for the question. I believe that when I noted those two specific things in the article, that I was taking from what the dialogue was, particularly in this body, in terms of potentially revisions or considerations for how to address crime and incidents of violence. And with that, I believe that all of those considerations are things that are left to the policy level, that is not something that if I were so fortunate to be confirmed as a U.S. District Court judge that I would speak to or have any role in whatsoever, that is something that is a policy consideration that is left to a body such as the legislative body.
So, Ms. Hodge, I will say, I'll make a prediction for you, which is that the Democrats on this committee will give lots of speeches about how they don't support defunding the police. But in your nomination, I'm going to predict every single Democrat is going to vote to confirm you, and the basis for my prediction is every single Democrat has voted to confirm every single judicial nominee that's come from President Biden, no matter how radical. They keep voting for nominees who've advocated, as you have, abolishing or defunding the police, or as you phrased it, reallocating police funding, which is taking the money away from the police. Now, your successor, you were the interim district attorney in Philadelphia. Your successor, Larry Krasner, has become quite infamous. He is one of the many George Soros prosecutors funded with massive amounts of money from Soros. And under his tenure, he has systematically refused to prosecute violent crime. He has released violent criminals, and we've seen in Philadelphia crime rates skyrocketing, murder rates skyrocketing, carjacking skyrocketing. Do you believe the policies of District Attorney Krasner have played a significant role in the escalating murder rates and crime rates in the city of Philadelphia?
Thank you for the question, Senator. The crime rates in Philadelphia, as well as the crime rates across the country, are a sad and stark reality of the concerns that we all have regarding violent crime. Specific to your question, myself, having been the district attorney of Philadelphia, having worked alongside and with law enforcement for a number of years, have the utmost respect and appreciation for the work that they do. And I also, when I served as district attorney...
Okay, Ms. Hodge, we have very limited time.
I
so my
understand.
question was, have the policies of Mr. Krasner contributed to the skyrocketing crime rates in Philadelphia?
I believe that in order to address an issue as complex as crime in Philadelphia or any city in this country or any place in this country, that it involves a cross-systems interaction between many individuals.
Okay,
And so
Ms.
I
Hodge,
can't speak
are
to...
you willing to answer yes or no?
I believe that I can't answer it yes or no because I believe it's complex. So
You also said in 2021, and this is a quote, you need to look at everything with a diversity lens. You need to take a moment to put on those glasses and look at every aspect, from hiring to promotion to business development to marketing to strategy to front-facing clients to everything. You need to have that lens. How could a litigant in Pennsylvania have confidence if they were appearing before you as a judge that they would be treated fairly, given your statement that everything has to be looked at from a racial lens? The Constitution is quite explicit protecting equal protection. What confidence would a litigant or a criminal defendant have when you publicly said everything needs to be looked at through that lens?
Senator Cruz, if you don't mind, if you could repeat the statement or the quote again, because that would be helpful.
Sure.
If answering the question.
You need to look at everything with a diversity lens. You need to take a moment to put on those glasses and to look at every aspect from hiring to promotion to business development to marketing to strategy to front-facing clients to everything. And you need to have that lens. That was the quote.
Senator Cruz, I don't recall the context within which I made that quote, so it's difficult for me to state whether or not it's regarding a matter or a case as opposed to another setting or environment where I may have made or provided that particular statement. However, I will say that I believe that everyone, and I've done this for a number of years in my work specifically as a prosecutor, deserves equal protection under the law, upholding the law and following the law and applying it evenly. And in doing so, I believe that if I were so fortunate to be confirmed, that anyone who would come before me would know that I want to hear all of the facts and circumstances. I want to hear and listen to the complete argument of counsel and the parties, and then apply the law to the facts and apply precedent in order to go ahead and render an appropriate decision.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Senator Cruz. Without objection, I'm going to enter into the record an article written by Ms. Hodge entitled Race, Justice, and Equality. The mandate for change will require collaboration across systems. It's been referred to in pieces throughout. I want to put it in its entirety so that we can read, all the members can read what you said from start to finish. And I will say that having looked at this one section, I want to quote exactly what you said. Leaders at every level, federal, state, and local, are actively, and this is post-George Floyd, are actively, aggressively working on legislation to address the root cause of the killing of black people in America, systemic racism. Recommendations currently being debated include, and then you go through a long list that include about 10 or 12 recommendations that are being considered. And so I think at least this puts it in the context of what you were trying to say. I kept looking for reallocating police funding. You listed that as one of the things that is being considered. Well, that's just true. Some states, some cities got into an active debate about the reallocation of police funding. So in fairness to you, and if there's anything else that you wish to put in the record that has been quoted from in part, in fairness to you, I want you to have that opportunity.
Thank you, Senator Durbin. That is correct, the full context you have described, and so I was listing recommendations that have been discussed by other entities, Congress included, in order to provide that for the dialogue within the content of the article.
And separate and apart from the interrogation at this hearing, I think it is noteworthy that many of the people on the other side of the table who are talking about reallocating funds, defunding, and so forth and so on, were pretty quick to call for the very same thing when it came to the FBI during the recent search of Mar-a-Lago, calling them the Gestapo and defund the FBI. So I think we have a mixed record here when it comes to some of these statements, and many of them have not been taken in context, but rather taken out of context. You may receive some written questions. I hope you'll respond to them quickly. Mr. Murphy, you got off the hook today. I'm not sure too many questions were asked. You happen to be on a panel with some people that were drawing other questions. That's no reflection at all on your very able ability. And I will say, I understand that you have a specialty in intellectual law. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chairman Durbin.
Any other areas, copyright or other areas of the law?
My emphasis has been patents, but I've worked in other areas of IP and civil litigation, Senator.
We desperately need that, and I think that's one of the reasons that you're being actively considered, and I hope become the nominee in the district court in Pennsylvania. So thank you and your family for being here today. Thank you all for being here and all the family members who have joined. You have seen this Senate Judiciary Committee at work. It is interesting when you listen to the tenor of the questions that one of the things we're most concerned about is whether a judge has the right temperament to be a judge. So we senators are displaying our temperament in the course of these hearings as well, and you can be the judge of us. And in terms of some of the legal questions that have been asked of you that may seem especially challenging, thank goodness they aren't asked of us, because we would have had equal difficulty in dealing with them. It's no reflection on you in any way whatsoever. Thank you for being willing to go through this process. It is in many ways frustrating and in other ways humbling, but it does give the American people an opportunity under oath to hear your testimony and to judge whether a lifetime appointment to this important federal judgeship is the right thing for you at the moment. Again, I go back to the fact that your bipartisan recommendation goes a long way with this senator and many others. So with that, the Senate Judiciary Committee stands adjourned.
Thank you.